Hi everybody, welcome to this new episode for the GenAI Nerd channel. And in this video, I will explain step by step how you can build and manage projects in Claude Cowork. Now, before I show you step by step how to do it, let me first explain why it's actually valuable to build projects in Claude Cowork instead of the chat. And I think there are two important advantages. The first advantage is that when you use Cowork, you can actually kind of give Cowork access to particular folders on your computer. And the moment you do so, it has access to all the files in the computer. And in that way, you no longer have to upload files into Claude. And that makes it actually much more convenient because now it can actually read files, edit files in the folder that you have designated to. So in that way, it becomes kind of much more integrated and interactive. A second important advantage is that when you have a project in Claude Cowork, it becomes much more easy to give feedback as you're using that project. And based on the feedback, it can actually continuously improve all the files in the folder that are helpful. As I will show, what you typically will do is to give instructions to build skills. And actually in Claude Cowork, it's very easy then to continuously update and improve these instructions and skills. And in that way, your environment becomes much more dynamic, which is something that is more difficult when you use simply the chat function. So I think these are the two most important advantages. And let me show you now how you can step by step start building a project in Claude Cowork. And so the first thing we need to do is to simply create a new folder on your computer. And so I'm here using Windows Explorer. So I just will go to New, create a new folder, and I will use as example how we can build a kind of digital professional twin project. So I will call this digital professional twin. Yeah, so now I created my folder and now we can go to Claude Cowork to start working with this folder. Yeah, so now I'm in Claude Cowork. And so now instead of going to the chat, I go to Cowork, and here we can now go to work in a project. And then I can drop down and now I can say create a new project, and we can now choose an existing folder, and now we can choose the folder that I just have created. Yes, so now I'm again in my digital professional twin project, which I created by selecting the folder. You see here, it actually refers to the folder that I have created on my computer. And now we can actually start building our digital professional twin. And the first thing I will do now is to actually ask to create a kind of bio of myself by simply collecting information from the internet. Yes, so I'm simply now writing a prompt, create an extensive bio description of Dries Vaams based on the available data on the internet. Now here you might always have the risk that it starts hallucinating. So I want to make sure that it only retrieves accurate information of myself. And to do so, I have actually built a specific skill, which is called the conservative retriever. Now I have made a separate video about that. So if you want to know more about how I've built that skill, you will find the link to that video in the descriptions. But so now I will simply refer to that skill so that it will use this conservative retriever to minimize the risk of hallucination. So I will say, please use the conservative retriever. Here is my skill to do so. And then I can just press enter, and now it will start working on creating a bio for me. So now we will have to wait a bit, and then if everything goes well, we can see the results. Yes, so now you will see it has kind of written indeed an extensive bio of myself. So you see it has been able to retrieve a lot of information, and at first hand everything looks also accurate. And now I can also ask it, for instance, to create a Word document about this. And then Cowork will now start creating the Word document and actually save it to the folder that we have enabled. Yes, so now Claude Cowork has finished creating the Word document, and we can now immediately see it here on the right hand side. So it already made a nice kind of document for me describing my bio that I can then also now find in the folder that I've created. So now we have already created a bio. Now to have a good kind of digital professional twin, I also want to give some instructions on how Claude should behave in this particular project. Yeah, so every time when I want to work in this project, I want Claude to know that it really needs to act as a professional digital twin. And how can we do that? We can do that by creating what is called a Claude.md file. And this will be the file that Claude Cowork will use as instructions every time when I do something in that project. So now we have to create this Claude.md file so that Claude receives instructions on how to behave in this particular project. And let me show you the prompt that I use to create such a Claude.md file. Yes, so here is the prompt that I use to create Claude.md files. So in this case, I'm saying research best practices for creating effective Claude.md files as of today's date. Then look at what is already in this folder. My intent for this folder is to act as the digital professional twin of these farms, build a Cloud.md. So I need to make sure that I'm now mentioning Cloud.md. Actually, when you use, for instance, Codex, the ChatGPT alternative, then you have to mention agent. But here we want to mention Cloud.md with a purpose section, tree structure of everything here, rules of engagement, and a notating section that tells you when to take notes, when to write them, how to format them, and when to create a new context line. Keep it under 100 lines because we don't want this Claude.md to be very extensive, because this is something that the agent, the Claude Cowork, will read every time when you write a prompt. We don't want to make it too extensive. We want to make it quite focused. And so now I can press enter, and now it will prepare for me this Cloud.md file, which again will automatically be stored in my folder. Yes, so now Claude Cowork has finished writing my Cloud.md file. So now we can also check whether the Cloud.md file is in my folder. And you see indeed now that in my folder is the Cloud.md file. So now I can briefly open that to see what is written in that file. So let me open it simply with a text editor. Yes, and here we can see that this is kind of a structured, brief description of how Claude should act as a digital professional twin in this particular folder. And so this will help it to give already customized responses, and it realizes that it needs to act like this kind of digital professional twin for me. So now we are actually ready to start using this project. Yeah? So now we have kind of created what we call context. We have given it some knowledge, namely a bio of myself, and we have given it instructions. That's this Cloud.md file. So now actually we have already kind of created the necessary decoration for my project to help me in a customized way. And so let me show you a first example of something we could do now in this particular project. Yeah, so now I can, for instance, identify 3 unique use cases on how I could leverage AI in ways that I did not yet consider, make sure that these use cases can help me in my day-to-day professional life. And you see this prompt is actually very straightforward. I don't really talk now a lot about myself, what I normally do, because that information is already present in the context of the folder. So in that way, I can keep the prompting very similar because I have already generated the context. So now I can press enter, and now we can see which kind of use cases it will generate for me. Yes, so now it has created 3 use cases for me. So the first one is an adversarial pre-submission review, because I'm a professor. I want to submit papers, so this can help me to prepare for a submission. A weekly research intelligence brief, again, clearly linked to my profession. And the third one is a consulting knowledge flywheel. So that would be more if I want kind of leverage consulting activities as a professor. So in this case, I think these 3 activities already make a lot of sense. Now, of course, you could say we want to maybe push it to make even more creative ideas. And actually, I have already created a skill, namely called the Crazy Ideator, to really push it to come up with creative ideas. So now I could kind of, as a follow-up prompt, leverage this Crazy Ideator skill to get some additional use cases. Yeah, so I can do that by simply now enabling the skill, saying use the Crazy Ideator to come up with additional use cases. And now I can press enter, and so now Claude Cowork can leverage this skill in my particular project. So now we can see where it's able to come up with even more creative ideas. And so now it has finished using the Crazy Ideator, and as you will see now, the ideas will get even more crazy. Yeah? So I say, look, a wild idea, your research as a conversational agent, or AI-powered innovation tribunal, a shadow board of AI advices for your own decisions, and so on. And you see actually it now has created quite some of quite radically creative ideas for me. And that's our skill. I can really push it now in that project to become radically creative. Now, the final thing I want to show you, and I think this is very important, is that now I can also start giving feedback. For instance, now it has created like, let me see, 9 ideas. Yeah? Now you could argue, okay, that's a bit too much. I just want to get 3 ideas every time when I use this crazy Ideator skill. And that I can now give as feedback. So I can say, when I use this skill, I only want 3 ideas. And then I can say, adjust the skill accordingly. And now actually, and this is really, I think, an advantage of Cowork, is that it can go into the skill, make adjustments so that the next time it will take this feedback into account. And in that way, actually, we can start building a kind of recursive learning system. Yeah? So every time when you use a project in Cowork, you can give feedback. You can optimize your skills, but you can also, for instance, optimize your Cloud.md file, or you can optimize the knowledge sources that you have. And in that way, by doing multiple iterations, you can constantly improve the whole context that you have built. And in that way, it will become more customized, step by step, more specialized. And I think that's really the power of this Cowork tool, that it's not a static system like projects in the normal chat, but that you really now can build a dynamic system. And I think that's really the big advantage. And so now it will be working, and then we will see at the end that it will have improved my skill. Yes, so what it has done now is actually to create for the skill an additional file where it will store feedback that I'm providing, and it will take that feedback into account every time when the skill is enabled. And in that way, I can really customize my skills by providing feedback. So I hope this can help you to start building your own projects in Cowork so that you can leverage the full integration, but also the ability to start giving feedback and build a kind of recursive learning system. So I hope this can be helpful for you. Thanks for your attention. Bye.